Most people fear rejection. They avoid it. They run from it. They shape their entire lives trying to escape the uncomfortable moment when someone says no. No to their idea. No to their presence. No to their worth. But here is a truth few people are strong enough to face. Rejection is not a sign of weakness. It is a revelation. Throughout history, the people who built empires, transformed societies, and mastered their own minds all encountered rejection again and again. But unlike the rest of the world, they did not see rejection as a wall. They saw it as a mirror that reveals the truth about people, a mirror that exposes weakness, a mirror that shows you who you really are when the world refuses to applaud you. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius understood something most people never learn. Your power does not come from acceptance. Your power comes from your response to rejection. While ordinary people become bitter when they are dismissed, the Stoic mind becomes sharper. While others seek approval, the Stoic becomes independent. And while the world chases validation, the Stoic quietly transforms rejection into strength. This is the secret that changes everything. Because when you learn how to use rejection, it stops being your enemy. It becomes your greatest weapon. In this video, we will explore 13 powerful Stoic lessons that reveal how rejection can become one of the greatest advantages in your life. These lessons are inspired by the wisdom of Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus. But more importantly, they reveal a deeper psychological truth about human nature. By the end of this journey, you will begin to see rejection in a completely different way, not as an obstacle, but as a hidden path toward power. The hidden Stoic power of rejection. Marcus Aurelius ruled the most powerful empire in the ancient world. Yet despite his authority, despite his wealth, despite the respect that came with the title of emperor, he still faced criticism, opposition, and rejection. The Roman Senate challenged him. Rival generals questioned him. Even the people he ruled sometimes doubted him. But Marcus Aurelius never allowed rejection to disturb his mind. In his private writings, he reminded himself of a simple truth. The opinions of others do not define your character. Your character is revealed by how you respond to their opinions. This idea sits at the very heart of Stoic philosophy. The Stoics believe that most suffering comes from our attachment to external approval. We want people to like us. We want them to agree with us. We want them to admire us. But the moment we depend on approval, we give away our freedom. Rejection then becomes painful because it threatens the image we want others to see. But the Stoics practiced something different. They practiced inner independence. They trained themselves to see rejection not as humiliation, but as information, a signal, a teacher, a moment that reveals both the weaknesses of others and the hidden strength within ourselves. When you begin to see rejection through this Stoic lens, something remarkable happens. You stop chasing acceptance, and the moment you stop chasing it, your power grows. This is where reverse psychology begins, because when you no longer depend on approval, people begin to feel your presence differently. They sense confidence, they sense calmness, they sense a mind that cannot easily be controlled, and that kind of mind is rare. Now let us explore the first lesson. Lesson 1. Rejection reveals truth. Rejection has a strange ability. It reveals the truth about people. When things are easy, when everyone agrees, when approval flows freely, it is almost impossible to see someone's real character. But the moment rejection appears, the mask begins to fall. People reveal their fears. They reveal their insecurities. They reveal the limits of their thinking. Seneca once wrote that adversity introduces a man to himself, but rejection introduces you to others. When someone rejects your idea, your presence, or your effort, they are unconsciously revealing the boundaries of their own perception. Many of the greatest innovations in history were initially rejected. When new thinkers challenged traditional beliefs, society resisted them, not because the ideas were weak, but because the ideas were unfamiliar. Consider the early philosophers of ancient Greece. Socrates questioned the thinking of powerful men in Athens. Instead of being celebrated, he was rejected and eventually condemned. But history revealed something important. Socrates was not the one who lacked wisdom. The society that rejected him lacked the courage to question itself. Rejection, therefore, often reveals the limitations of the people who deliver it. Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply. He wrote that when someone criticizes you, the first question should not be whether they approve of you. The question should be whether their judgment is grounded in truth. If their criticism is correct, you improve. If their criticism is flawed, their rejection becomes meaningless. This perspective transforms rejection into knowledge. Instead of reacting emotionally, the Stoic mind observes calmly. What does this rejection reveal? Is there wisdom hidden inside it? Or is it simply the voice of someone trapped within their own limitations? When you ask these questions, rejection stops being personal. It becomes educational. And education is power. Lesson 2. The power of silence. Most people react immediately when they are rejected. They argue, they defend themselves, they try desperately to explain why the rejection is wrong. But in doing so, they reveal something dangerous. They reveal emotional dependence. Epictetus warned his students about this weakness. He said that if someone insults you and you feel the need to respond immediately, you have already surrendered your power. Silence, however, has a different effect. Silence creates mystery. Silence creates curiosity. And silence creates psychological tension. When someone rejects you and expects a reaction, your calm silence disrupts their expectations. They begin to wonder, did their rejection matter? Did it affect you at all? Why are you not reacting? This quiet response often has a deeper impact than any argument ever could. Marcus Aurelius practiced this form of restraint constantly. As emperor, he faced endless criticism, but instead of responding to every accusation, he remained calm and focused on his responsibilities. His silence communicated something powerful. He did not need to defend his worth. His actions would speak for him. In modern psychology, this phenomenon is well understood. Humans naturally seek emotional reactions from others. When they do not receive the reaction they expect, they begin to question their own behavior. Silence, therefore, becomes a subtle form of reverse psychology. It shifts the psychological balance. Instead of you seeking their approval, they begin seeking your attention. But this silence must come from genuine inner control. If silence is used only as manipulation, it loses its power. The Stoics practiced silence not to control others, but to control themselves. And once you master your own reactions, you become far more difficult to manipulate. Lesson 3. Detachment creates control. There is a paradox in human relationships. The more desperately you seek approval, the less respect you receive. But the more detached you become, the more others begin to value your presence. This is one of the deepest psychological truths the Stoics understood. Epictetus taught that freedom begins the moment you stop needing what is outside your control. Approval is outside your control. Rejection is outside your control. But your reaction belongs entirely to you. When someone rejects you and you remain calm, something unusual happens. You reveal emotional independence. And emotional independence is rare. Most people are quietly desperate for validation. They shape their opinions to match the crowd. They adjust their personality to avoid criticism. They silence their ideas to prevent rejection. But the Stoic does the opposite. The Stoic expresses truth without attachment to outcome. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself constantly that his duty was not to please everyone. His duty was to act with integrity. When you adopt this mindset, rejection loses its emotional weight. It becomes simply another event in the world, a passing moment. And when you are no longer controlled by the fear of rejection, you gain something extraordinary. You gain psychological control. Because people instinctively respect those who are not easily shaken. They recognize the quiet confidence of someone who does not beg for approval. This is where reverse psychology begins to unfold naturally. The less you chase validation, the more your presence begins to attract it. Not because you demanded it, but because your independence made it valuable. Lesson 4. Rejection builds inner strength. There is a quiet strength that only rejection can create. It is the strength that forms when a person realizes that approval from others is not necessary for survival. Most people grow up believing that acceptance is essential. They learn early that praise brings comfort and rejection brings pain. Because of this conditioning, they spend years shaping their behavior around the opinions of others. But rejection breaks this illusion. When someone dismisses your effort, questions your worth, or refuses your presence, you are forced to confront a simple question. Who are you when approval disappears? The Stoics believed that this moment is one of the most important tests of character. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that the opinions of others were temporary shadows. They changed constantly. Today, someone may admire you. Tomorrow, they may criticize you. If your confidence depends on their shifting judgments, your peace will always be unstable. But rejection offers a different opportunity. It forces you to build strength from within. Consider the story of Epictetus. Before becoming one of the greatest Stoic teachers in history, he lived as a slave in ancient Rome. His master treated him harshly, and his life was filled with limitations that most people would have considered unbearable. Yet Epictetus discovered something extraordinary. Even when the world denies you freedom, it cannot control your mind unless you allow it. The rejection he experienced from society did not destroy him. It strengthened his discipline. It sharpened his thinking. It taught him that inner freedom is far more powerful than external approval. When rejection appears in your life, it gives you a similar opportunity. Instead of collapsing under the weight of someone else's judgment, you can use that moment to strengthen your self-respect. Each rejection becomes a small training exercise. A moment to practice calmness, a moment to practice independence, a moment to prove that your worth does not depend on applause. Over time, these small moments build something remarkable, an unshakable inner strength, and once you possess that strength, rejection loses its power to intimidate you. Lesson 5. Scarcity increases value. Human psychology contains an interesting contradiction. The more available something is, the less valuable it appears. But the more scarce it becomes, the more desirable it suddenly feels. This principle appears everywhere in human behavior. Rare objects are considered valuable. Limited opportunities attract intense attention. And people who are difficult to access often appear more intriguing than those who constantly seek approval. The Stoics did not speak about this concept in the language of modern psychology, but they understood its deeper principle. Value grows from self-respect. When someone constantly begs for acceptance, they communicate a hidden message. They communicate that they do not believe in their own worth. But when someone accepts rejection calmly and moves forward without desperation, they communicate something entirely different. They communicate confidence. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire filled with ambitious men seeking influence and recognition. Many of them tried endlessly to impress him. But the individuals who commanded the greatest respect were not the ones constantly seeking attention. They were the ones focused on their responsibilities. They did not chase approval. They allowed their actions to speak. And because they were not desperate for recognition, their presence carried greater weight. Rejection can therefore create an unexpected advantage. When someone rejects you and you quietly continue your path without pleading for their validation, you introduce scarcity. Your attention becomes less available, your approval becomes less predictable, and suddenly the psychological balance shifts. Instead of you trying to earn their respect, they begin to wonder if they underestimated you. This shift does not happen through manipulation. It happens through self-possession. The Stoic does not withdraw to create artificial value. The Stoic simply refuses to chase what does not belong to him, and in doing so, he becomes far more valuable than he ever appeared before. Lesson 6. Walking away is power. One of the most difficult skills a person can learn is the ability to walk away. Most people stay too long in places where they are not respected. They remain in conversations that drain their dignity. They chase opportunities that repeatedly reject them. They invest energy into relationships that offer nothing in return. Why do they stay? Because walking away feels like defeat? But the Stoics understood something important. Walking away is not defeat when the situation itself is unworthy of your effort. It is discipline. Seneca once wrote that a wise person knows when to engage with the world and when to step back from it. Not every battle deserves your attention. Not every rejection deserves your persistence. Sometimes rejection is simply a signal that your energy belongs elsewhere. Marcus Aurelius ruled during a time filled with political conflict and endless arguments within the Roman court. Many officials attempted to provoke him, hoping to draw him into unnecessary disputes. But Marcus Aurelius understood the danger of constant reaction. Every argument consumes energy. Every unnecessary conflict distracts you from your purpose. So he practiced restraint. When criticism was meaningless, he ignored it. When arguments were pointless, he walked away from them mentally. This discipline protected his focus. Walking away sends a powerful message. It tells the world that your time and attention are valuable. It tells people that your dignity is not negotiable. And most importantly, it tells your own mind that you will not allow rejection to trap you in places where you do not belong. When you develop the strength to walk away, rejection becomes far less intimidating, because you understand that your path does not depend on the approval of any single person or opportunity. There are always other paths, and the Stoic mind moves toward them without hesitation. Lesson 7. Emotional control wins respect. Rejection often triggers a powerful emotional reaction: anger, embarrassment, frustration. These emotions appear quickly because the human mind is deeply sensitive to social judgment. For thousands of years, survival depended on belonging to a group. Being rejected by the tribe once meant isolation and danger. Even though modern life is different, the emotional memory of that fear still exists inside us. But the Stoics trained themselves to confront this reaction with discipline. They believed that emotional control is one of the greatest forms of strength. Epictetus told his students that the first step toward wisdom is learning to pause before reacting. When rejection appears, the mind immediately tries to defend itself. It wants to argue, prove, justify, and restore its wounded pride. But the Stoic asks a different question. Is this reaction necessary? Often the answer is no. Marcus Aurelius practiced this awareness constantly. When someone criticized him, he would remind himself that anger does not improve the situation. Anger only reveals that you have lost control of yourself. Calmness, on the other hand, communicates strength. When someone rejects you and you respond with patience instead of anger, they witness something unusual. They witness self-mastery. And self-mastery commands respect even from those who disagree with you. Think about the individuals in your life who appear truly confident. They are rarely the loudest people in the room. They are rarely the ones reacting emotionally to every criticism. Instead, they possess a quiet stability. They listen, they observe, and they respond thoughtfully rather than impulsively. This calm presence creates trust. Because people instinctively feel safer around someone who controls their emotions. Rejection therefore becomes a training ground for emotional mastery. Each time you face criticism without losing your composure, you strengthen your discipline. Over time, this discipline becomes visible to others, and the respect it creates is far more powerful than the approval you once chased. Lesson 8. Rejection filters weak opportunities. Not every opportunity deserves your energy, yet most people treat every rejection as a tragedy because they assume that every opportunity they lose was valuable. But this assumption is often wrong. Rejection has a hidden filtering power. It removes paths that were never meant for you. The Stoics believe that life is filled with distractions disguised as opportunities. Many of the things people chase bring temporary excitement, but lead nowhere meaningful. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that time is the most valuable resource a human being possesses. Every day you spend chasing something unworthy is a day you cannot recover. Rejection, therefore, can act like a gatekeeper. It blocks doors that would have wasted your time. Think about how often people fight desperately to enter places where they are not respected. They pursue jobs that drain their spirit. They chase approval from individuals who never truly valued them. When rejection occurs, they feel humiliated. But what if that rejection protected them from something worse? History offers many examples of individuals whose greatest achievements appeared only after earlier doors closed. A young philosopher might be rejected by one school only to later develop ideas that reshape an entire civilization. An artist may be dismissed by critics only to discover a completely different audience that understands their work. At the moment of rejection, this larger pattern is invisible. But the Stoic understands that life often guides us through removal rather than reward. Epictetus taught that when something is taken away, you should not immediately assume that you have lost something valuable. Instead, ask yourself a different question. What space has this rejection created? Sometimes the greatest gift rejection gives you is the freedom to stop investing energy in something that never deserved it. When you begin to see rejection as a filter rather than a punishment, your perspective shifts completely. Instead of clinging to every closed door, you begin to move forward with clarity. And clarity allows you to focus your energy only on opportunities that align with your true purpose. Lesson 9. Criticism becomes strategy. Most people experience criticism as an attack. They hear negative feedback and immediately feel the need to defend themselves. Their mind rushes to protect their pride, and in doing so they ignore something extremely valuable: information. The Stoics believed that criticism, even when delivered harshly, often contains fragments of truth. Marcus Aurelius wrote that if someone points out a flaw in your behavior, and they are correct, you should welcome the correction. Why? Because improvement is more valuable than ego. This perspective transforms criticism into a strategic advantage. When someone rejects your work or questions your ideas, they may unintentionally reveal weaknesses you had not yet noticed. These weaknesses become areas for growth. Consider the early days of many great thinkers and creators. Their work was often criticized before it was understood. But the individuals who succeeded were not the ones who ignored criticism completely. They were the ones who studied it carefully. They separated emotional attacks from useful insight. The emotional attacks were discarded. The useful insight became fuel for improvement. Seneca believed that wise people treat criticism the way skilled craftsmen treat raw materials. Even rough material can be shaped into something valuable. Rejection often brings criticism with it. People explain why they said no. Sometimes their reasons are superficial. Sometimes their reasons reveal genuine weaknesses. The Stoic mind does not react emotionally. Instead, it listens with discipline. Is there something here I can learn? If the answer is yes, then rejection becomes a teacher. If the answer is no, then the criticism belongs to the limitations of the person who delivered it. Either way, the Stoic gains something, because the Stoic uses every form of feedback as strategic information, and information is one of the most powerful advantages a person can possess. Lesson 10. Growth comes from resistance. Strength is never created in comfort. This truth appears everywhere in nature. Muscles grow stronger only when they encounter resistance. Minds grow sharper when they face complex problems. Character becomes resilient when it passes through adversity. Rejection is a form of resistance. It pushes against your expectations. It challenges your confidence. It forces you to question your abilities. At first, this resistance feels uncomfortable, but the Stoics believe discomfort often signals growth. Marcus Aurelius observed that obstacles are not interruptions to our path. They are part of the path itself. Every rejection you experience contains a hidden invitation. The invitation is to improve. When an idea is rejected, you can refine your thinking. When your effort is dismissed, you can strengthen your discipline. When your presence is overlooked, you can deepen your self-respect. Each rejection creates a small pressure on your character. Most people try to escape this pressure. They avoid situations where rejection might occur because they fear the emotional discomfort. But by avoiding rejection, they also avoid growth. Epictetus taught that a person who wishes to improve must be willing to appear foolish at times. You must be willing to risk failure. You must be willing to experience rejection, because the only alternative is stagnation. Think of the most capable individuals you admire. Their success did not emerge from a life of constant acceptance. It emerged from countless moments where their efforts were challenged. They faced rejection, learned from it, and returned stronger. Over time, this process builds resilience. Resilience is not simply the ability to endure difficulty. It is the ability to transform difficulty into strength. And when you develop this ability, rejection loses its power to discourage you. Instead, it becomes a signal that you are moving beyond the boundaries of comfort, which is exactly where growth begins. Lesson 11. Indifference creates attraction. There is a quiet paradox in human psychology. The more desperately a person seeks approval, the less interesting they appear. But the moment someone becomes indifferent to approval, their presence begins to attract attention. This phenomenon is not magic. It is simply human nature. People are naturally drawn to individuals who appear self-sufficient. When someone does not seem dependent on praise or validation, they radiate a kind of inner stability. The Stoics practiced this principle long before modern psychology explained it. Epictetus taught that freedom begins when you stop placing your happiness in the hands of others. As long as your sense of worth depends on someone else's approval, you remain emotionally dependent. But the moment you become indifferent to approval, you regain control of yourself. This indifference does not mean arrogance or coldness. It means inner balance. It means understanding that praise and rejection are both temporary opinions. They do not define your character, and they do not determine your path. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that fame, admiration, and criticism all fade with time. What remains is the quality of your actions. When you begin to live with this understanding, your behavior changes naturally. You stop performing for applause. You stop adjusting your personality to please everyone. You become authentic. And authenticity has a strange effect on people. It attracts curiosity, because authenticity is rare. Most individuals spend their lives adapting themselves to gain approval. They hide parts of their true thinking in order to fit comfortably within the expectations of others. But when someone stands calmly in their own identity, without demanding acceptance, they become memorable. Rejection loses its power over them. And in that independence, others begin to see them differently, not as someone seeking approval, but as someone whose presence carries quiet confidence. Lesson 12. Self-worth beyond approval. One of the deepest lessons in Stoic philosophy is this: your worth does not come from the opinions of others, it comes from your character. Yet many people spend their lives measuring themselves through external approval. They measure their success through praise. They measure their value through popularity. They measure their confidence through acceptance. This creates a fragile identity, because approval can disappear at any moment. Marcus Aurelius observed that the opinions of others are constantly changing. The same people who praise you today may criticize you tomorrow. If your self-worth depends on those shifting opinions, your peace will always be unstable. But the Stoics built their identity on something different. They built it on virtue. Virtue meant living with integrity, acting with discipline, speaking truthfully, fulfilling responsibilities with sincerity. When a person measures themselves through these internal standards, rejection loses its ability to wound them deeply, because their worth is no longer determined by applause. Epictetus once asked his students a powerful question. If someone insulted your body, you might feel angry. But if someone insulted your character and the accusation was false, why should it disturb you? The insult belongs to their misunderstanding, not your identity. This perspective creates enormous psychological freedom. When rejection occurs, the Stoic does not immediately assume that their value has been diminished. Instead, they return to a simple question: did I act with integrity? If the answer is yes, then rejection changes nothing about their worth. It simply reflects the opinion of another mind. And opinions are temporary. Character is permanent. Lesson 13. Rejection is redirection. Sometimes rejection appears painful because we cannot yet see where life is guiding us. We assume that the path we wanted was the only path that mattered, but life rarely unfolds according to our first expectations. The Stoics believed that the universe follows a natural order far greater than individual desires. What appears like misfortune in one moment may reveal itself as guidance in another. Marcus Aurelius frequently reminded himself to accept events as they occur, not because they are always pleasant, but because they are part of a larger design. Rejection often acts as a form of redirection. It moves us away from environments where we do not belong. It pushes us toward opportunities we would never have considered otherwise. Think about the moments in life when a closed door forced you to change direction. At the time, it may have felt like failure, but months or years later, you might recognize that the rejection led you somewhere far more meaningful. This pattern appears throughout history. Many individuals who changed the world first experienced rejection that forced them onto a different path. Had they received immediate acceptance, they might never have discovered their true potential. The Stoic mind therefore learns to pause before judging rejection as negative. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" the Stoic asks a different question: "Where might this be guiding me?" This question transforms rejection into curiosity. It allows you to continue moving forward without bitterness, and forward movement is always more powerful than regret. Final Stoic conclusion: the hidden gift of rejection. Rejection will appear in every human life. No matter how talented you are, no matter how disciplined you become, there will always be moments when someone refuses your idea, dismisses your effort, or misunderstands your intentions. But the Stoics understood something that most people never learn. Rejection is not the enemy. Your reaction to rejection determines whether it becomes a wound or a weapon. When you fear rejection, it controls your decisions. When you chase approval, you surrender your independence. But when you accept rejection calmly, something remarkable happens. You become free, free from the need to impress everyone, free from the anxiety of constant validation, free to pursue your path with clarity and discipline. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the obstacle in the path becomes the path itself. Rejection is one of those obstacles, but hidden within it are lessons that strengthen character, sharpen judgment, and reveal the deeper truth about human nature. Each rejection teaches you something. It reveals the truth. It strengthens resilience. It filters distractions. It redirects your path. And slowly, over time, you begin to see rejection differently, not as a signal to stop, but as a reminder to grow stronger. Because the strongest minds in history were not built through constant acceptance. They were built through moments of resistance, moments when the world said no, and they continued forward anyway. So the next time rejection appears in your life, pause for a moment, observe it calmly, and remember the quiet wisdom of the Stoics. Rejection does not define your worth. It reveals your strength.